What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I am Ronnie Skelton II, also known as King Majora, and today's video is like a red pill video, and it is the sequel to Elohim, the non-human intelligence among us. This one will go more depth into the names themselves, the etymology, and the overall structure of government that is relating to the non human intelligence that our ancient ancestors had spoken about in antiquity. This is BAALIM, the government structure of the non human intelligence. And I wanted to start with the term Balim or Baal, Baal. Now, most people, if you're not well versed, you're like, "What do you mean? Is this the devil, the fallen god, the false idol, the rival to Yahweh Baal? Are we speaking on that term?" And I'm saying no. In fact, that sort of ideology that permeates into conspiracy culture is what makes a lot of people not take it very seriously. The whole notion that it's Baphomet transgenderism. Why don't you point to the actual Inanna? The Inanna, the Sumerian prostitute deity that did transgender surgeries, and all of her priests just happen to be typically designed to be trannies. Like I find that very odd, ladies and gentlemen, and I think that there is a clear amount of information on the past that we will get into in this video that discusses, the Elohim, as I've discussed them in previous videos, such as the previous installment, Elohim, the non-human intelligence among us, and the monotheism deception. There is clearly a council, the Elohim Council, as seen within Psalms 82. Of course, you can go to the original video or the monotheism deception that speaks about the I am suffix in plurality. And basically, we're gonna further elaborate on the notions that when you really look at the ancient world and the structure, you take for example the Chinese pantheon. Let's just get a refresher on that real quick. The Jade Emperor. The Jade Empire, Jade bureaucracy. Jade Empire most commonly refers to two related concepts: Chinese mythology and folk religion Taoism. The Jade Emperor, Huiyang, also Huiyang Dadi, or august personage of Jade, is the supreme ruler of heaven in Chinese popular religion and Taoism. He heads a vast celestial bureaucracy or heavenly bureaucracy that mirrors the structure of the imperial Chinese government. He governs gods, spirits, natural phenomena, and human affairs through ministries and officials, overseeing weather, wealth, justice, epidemics. Petitions, reports, rewards, and punishments flow through this hierarchical system. He is often depicted as a wise administrative sovereign rather than a distant creator. His origins vary. Some accounts describe him as a mortal who achieved immortality through long cultivation. Others link him to earlier sky deities. He rose to prominence especially from the Song dynasty onward and remains important in the Chinese New Year observances. In the classic novel Journey to the West, he appears as the ruler of the heavenly court challenged by the Monkey King Sun Wukong. Of course, he's in video games. So you can see that the Chinese had a system. They had a Tao. There's Taoism in the Eastern philosophies, and the structure is there, and I think it's more universal. It ties into the Elohim structure, the Elohim being a council, represented within perhaps being the parliamentary system, what is above the typical lords and, system with aristocracy and oligarchy. It's not so much that we created the deities to reflect our own government structures and our own sins, vices, and virtues. It's more so that we have inherited it from the previous peoples that were here. And of course, I went into it within Elohim, the non-human intelligence among us. Now, I went into that one with more of a Zechariah Sitchin, Michael Tellinger flavoring. Because Mauro Bellino, the former Vatican translator, who basically got, axed on his, being involved with the top Vatican publisher in the Italy region because he basically started to expose the bare minimum of the Torah and the Tanakh, and basically started to discuss the henotheistic tendencies to reflect the greater Canaanite, Babylonian, and Sumerian influences. And this system is seen throughout. The Elohim structure may just reflect, as I was thinking deeper into the Canaanite roots, the ideas of Baal Hadad, the Baal, as I've discussed before, and I will go in more depth right now, is the Lord. It is a Lord. The context was never a boogeyman. It was always that it was meant to be establishing who had the rulership here, and Baal means like Lord, Master. The word Archon itself, when you strip all of the agnostic flavorings outside of even their cosmology, it still means ruler. These systems, and the more I thought about it, that the earth is it really is boiling down to maybe we are just showing the smaller expressions in a microcosmic sense into the macrocosm, that in so much as the ancients were telling of a monarchy system with some form of parliament like structure where the Elohim themselves act as a form of council, a wise council of decision makers that are involved with this substance that I'm about to get into next, called the ME. The ME is an ancient Sumerian, basically a type of technology slash energy system that I think is involved with greater etheric substrates that we began to develop our understandings with prior to the Einstein Edison era, Rockefeller inspired dumbing down the condition to only accept the oligarchy of academia as the ultimate authority. But let's get into the ME. The concept of the ME from Sumerian and Akkadian mythology and religions. Brought to you by Grok. Here are the sources that it utilized to get its information. In Sumerian and broader Mesopotamian thought, the Me, Sumerian Me, cuneiform Akkadian equivalent, Parsu, is one of the most central yet enigmatic concepts in religion, cosmology, and culture. It refers to the divine decrees, the powers, ordinances, essences, or foundational principles that undergird civilization, cosmic order, social institutions, technologies, crafts, behaviors, rituals, and even negative human conditions. These Me make ordered human society possible as the Sumerians understood it and defined the proper relationship between humanity and the gods. Scholars have long struggled with the precise translation because no single modern term fully captures it. Common renderings include divine powers, divine ordinances, decrees of the gods, divine attributes, essences, norms, or rites. Some leave it untranslated as ME. The concept is attested primarily in literary, lexical, and mythological texts rather than everyday administrative documents, and it is often treated both as an abstract principle and, strikingly, as something that can be controlled, collected, stored, transported, delayed, or even worn like a physical object. Linguistic and conceptual background. The Sumerian noun me is distinct from, though possibly related to, the copular verb me, to be. Some scholars, following ideas associated with J.J.A. Van Dijk and others, have linked it etymologically to the idea of essence, or what a thing is, should be, the divinely ordained nature or ideal state of a phenomenon. Others question this connection on dialectical and formal grounds. For example, differences in Amosal dialect forms. The Akkadian Parsu emphasizes ritual, ordinance, or cultic practices. One modern analysis, Gong Yushu, proposes these three interlocking epistemic levels for the concept. A primordial creative force that separated heaven and earth, generated the cosmos, and continues to govern it. The essential attributes, basic laws, and ideal states inherent in materials, phenomena, and spirits. The concrete materials, institutions, or entities that embody those attributes and laws. This multi-layered character has led some to compare ME conceptually, if not historically, to ideas like the Chinese Tao and elusive ordering principles that both transcendent and immanent. In practice, the ME are not purely positive. They encompass both desirable and destructive aspects of existence, victory and heroism, alongside falsehood, enmity, and the destruction of cities. The Sumerians appeared to have viewed such dualities as divinely decreed and inevitable parts of the human condition rather than the moral failings to be eradicated. Correct ritual performance of the ME was essential. During a ritual, the relevant deity was thought to incarnate into the performer, and proper temple practice of the ME underpinned the existence of ordered society. Mythological contexts. Two major Sumerian compositions illuminate the ME. Enki and the World Order. Enki gathers the ME and entrusts them into Enlil gathers the ME and entrusts them into Enki, Lord of the Abzu, wisdom and freshwater. Enki then distributes and organizes them across the world, beginning with his own city of Eridu and extending to places such as Melhua, and Dilmun. He assigns functions, crafts, and cosmic roles, establishing prosperity and order. Inanna complains that she has been shortchanged in divine prerogatives. Enki responds by affirming those she already holds. The text presents the ME as a tool of cosmic administration that Enki brokers out to maintain the functions of the world. Inanna and Enki, the transfer of the arts of the civilization from Eridu to Uruk. This is the richest source of the content of the ME. Inanna travels by boat to Enki's temple in the Abzu or at Eridu, seeking to enhance the glory of her city, Uruk. After a drinking contest, the intoxicated Enki bestows a large number of ME upon her. Accounts mention around 94 or more than 100. She loads them onto her boat of heaven and departs. Enki later regrets the gift and repeatedly tries via his minister Ismud and various supernatural agents to retrieve him. But Inanna successfully brings them to Uruk, where they are displayed and celebrated. The myth is often interpreted as the theological explanation for the cultural and political ascendancy of Uruk and Inanna's cult relative to the older cult center of Eridu. The ME are treated as transportable and displayable entities, and some described as physical objects, musical instruments, royal insignia, and others as technologies or abstract powers, basket weaving, victory, and sexual intercourse. How abstractions could be stored or handled as left unexplained in the text, highlighting the fluidity between concrete and abstract in Sumerian thought. Jacob Klein and others have examined cases in which ME functions as concrete objects in literary contexts. The list of ME. The tablets of Inanna and Enki preserve a repeated catalog given 4 times in the composition that this is fragmentary. Roughly 60 items survive clearly, though the original total exceed 100. A representative sequence following standards and reconstruction such as those drawn from Kramer and others includes offices and royal priestly attributes, and ship, godship, exalted and enduring crown, throne of kingship, exalted scepter, royal insignia, exalted shrine, shepherdship, kingship, lasting ladyship, various priestly offices. It's Luma Guda, divine lady, cosmic and underworld phenomena, descent into the netherworld, ascent from the netherworld, the flood, cultic and social roles. Kuraga Garabadara Sagurasag, figures associated with Inanna's cult, often described as eunuchs or specialized entertainers, Hero of heaven, cult chamber. Arts, crafts, and technologies, art, music, and specific instruments, Gusalim, Lilis, Ub, Messi, Allah, metalworking, scribeship, craft of the smith, leather worker, building, and basket weaver. Abstract qualities and conditions, truth, sexual intercourse, prostitution, law, libel, eldership, heroship, power, enmity, straightforwardness, destruction of cities, lamentation, rejoicing of the heart, falsehood, wisdom, attention, holy purification, fear, terror, strife, peace, weariness, victory, counsel, troubled heart, judgment, decision. The mixture of high kingship, everyday crafts, sexual and cultic practices, and destructive forces underscores that the ME constitutes a comprehensive inventory of civilization itself, ordered and disordered alike. So you see there that the more in-depth look into the ME itself. The ME apparently was some form of tangible, energetic, technologically capable of being, I guess, interacted with type of substance that may connect to the concepts of Vril, the power of the coming race, this energy source that, there's the critics say that there's not a lot of people who were involved with the Nazi infrastructure that were deep into it, although there were these other movements like Orsic and surrounding. But it does, a lot of the times they fail to really understand the impact that it had on the main cast. That did in fact support the concepts of the Vril novel being real, such as some involved with the Thule Society and higher up within the SS itself were interested in this Vril energy that the ancient ancestor Nordic type race was cultivating and utilizing and harnessing. And I think that we were on the verge of cracking it ourselves, or had it in the time of the ether explosion when we started to discuss ether and the concepts therein. But I think with the Edison, Einstein, Rockefeller, all of these fundamental concepts and peoples coming about at the same time to formulate the oligarchs of an era, basically with the mindset of basically making people workers, not thinkers. I've went into this in my video about Rockefeller and the mental cleanliness, hygiene, and the social engineering that he basically went through with philanthropy with the friends like Carnegie and Ford, the types that basically got involved and social engineered people. But this was prominent in the thoughts of the elite class. And to think that it was not is foolish. I mean, when you really consider that the elites have nothing but free time and money on their hands, they can go down several times in a week and go get ayahuasca trips in South Africa and go buy a grimoire collection worth $2,000 for nothing and communicate the same with buddies who do the same shit. And I think they have a more advanced understanding and their synapses are firing correctly because I think that we have some real groundwork to say that the non-human intelligence around us is some form of monarchy that we inherit. We are government's rudimentary structures that eventually got tweaked and fine-tuned with all of the lords, the parliaments, the Magna Cartas, and all the other charters over time that developed into the imperial European world and the Levantian world and the northern African, Egyptian type of area. These people had clearly had some ritualistic manipulation understandings of the universe around them, and this ME was just the manifestation of their understandings of it. I think it's the same with Vril. I think that whatever it is might be interchangeable, bros. I think that Vril and ME might be the same concept. In certain readings of the Akkadian tablets, it's like the ME actually overrides the Anunnaki, the Elohim. Like the decisions that this universal quantum engine, whatever it is that manifests these types of fundamental natures of the building blocks of etheric government. These systems were somehow overriding any sort of personal dogmas or political at any given time. And I have a persuasion that, well, was it likely that with the Sitchin route, did the BAALIM, the lords, and all of the family of the nobility and their aristocracy and the actual crown, wherever it may be on or beyond Earth, you know, the rulership of the planet. You study the Akkadian tablets, the Assyriology, or even if you just know a little bit based on the Zechariah Sitchin material and the Michael Tellinger all like work that evolved out of him. I mean, the fact that the conflict between Marduk and Inanna over Dumuzi, the earlier forms, it's like that having to do with Idu Nana and Sargon of Akkad and all of the and his daughter that did so much to try to revive the ancient past. And the Judean culture, which I take heavily emphasis on for my own religious beliefs and occult shamanism, because I don't think that the Bible itself is alluding to anything remotely close to the structure that we have given it. With my the monotheism deception and the Elohim, the greatest story never told, I go into this in great detail that there seems to be a henotheistic structure. I mean, there's a difference between El Elyon, the Most High El, or Most High God. There's El Shaddai, or God Almighty, or a might, or a mighty El. And Elohim in its plurality. The Adonai, the sense of calling them majestic lords. I mean, the medieval times saw Jesus as a liege. He wasn't just a lord, he was a liege. And his liege was basically that he controlled armies. He can navigate the malachim, the angels. If you believe that route, now I've taken a personal stance on it. It's more so an evolution of the rise and fall, back and forth power play between Dumuzi, Anana, and Marduk. Jesus as a form of Zagreus, Dionysus, Tammuz, all of the same flavorings of Demusid, basically, that go into the rise and fall shepherd sometimes, and his connections with Dionysus, and the concept of ritualistic madness or spiritual ecstasy or rapture. The Victorian era revival of the concept that Christ was an oil itself, a psychedelic substance that communicated with the greater Elohim infrastructure. To be enraptured with Christ, to be taken by the ecstasy of the psychedelic ointment of what makes a person a Moshiach, Yeshua or Joshua, the real name of Jesus, would have been the name designated for a man of the tribe of someone who is to be the king to come. It's similar to how the Europeans do it with their own king naming system. But basically, whatever Elohim wants to interact with the humanity. Of course, you can go into the Marobolino gods of the Bible when speaking about the Levitical Konahim and the breastplate made of the gemstones. We cargo culted an understanding of basically a communication device that's like an apron with technologies on it that communed with the Elohim structure. That's, of course, Marobolino gods of the Bible. There's clearly several methods of communication that take place through these systems that the Elohim utilize, or the greater lords and aristocracy, or Baal or Baalim, Malachim, the emissaries or messengers of the greater system, and how they interact with both humans and non-human intelligences. We can actually look into the actual names presented in the ancient religions. Baal meaning Lord. You can associate it with Baal Zebub, or they say Lord of the Flies, or Baal Zebul, Lord of the Heavenly Host. It would be like Lord or Baal Jesus, or Baal Yeshua bin Yosef, if you really wanted to go that accurate with it. And you start to see that they had several mechanisms, and I do believe that many of the architectures around the world, including the advanced chapel buildings, for those of you who understand the missing time hypothesis and the fabricated history Tartaria mythos. I mean, these, or just not even that, just the Bell technology that was destroyed during the World Wars. These architectures are in tune with the geo structures within like the Earth system, I think. And we have lost out on this technology. And I think we were starting to revigorate ourselves with that structure. But then it got hijacked by the movement I spoke of Edison, Einstein, and Rockefeller types. They don't have to necessarily be completely tied to the hip, but those names are the ones that progressed in the world within academia and technological prowess. And I think it stagnated us just by seeing the technology of the UAPs on screen when you see them, that have been revealed by the U.S. Armed Forces to be defying physics, basically, or anything that should be able to be possible with our current understandings. Maybe it's the understandings that need to be thrown out. I don't know. That's just me. But the Lord, yeah, the Lords. This is, we got to start thinking of the religious structure and form of the basically the form of monarchy. You got to go back to the ways of basically seeing these things for what they are, that they had a system, that there was probably a rudimentary technology interfacing with all types of architecture that we have just simply lost, or we simply have intentionally allowed to be stifled and put into some black world projects that would be tied with, basically the UFO question. It's a lot to think about, people. But yeah, the lords, Baalim, with their Melachim, the emissaries, the Elohim Council, the main council of wise decision makers, the family of the royal blood, the Anunnaki. Some say it's from heavens to earth they came, but some say it's the most important royal seed, the most important royal family. We can look at it either way. What we have is an ultra-terrestrial presence in our ancient past, according to our ancestors, that engineered humanity, and I went into that previously, check out the other videos, and had a system of governance that relied heavily upon an infrastructure similar to the monarchies of the European world today, as it was bestowed upon them the rulership to mankind's kings and priest class, I guess, upon their departure, or when they decided not to really intervene in our presence upon the flood and or shortly after. So yeah, as the hybridization continues of the Homo sapiens sapien mixed races and their distinct haplogroups, we have to look upon the great and terrible day of the Lords, the Lord, the Baal, the BAALIM. I don't know. It looks like they're trying to prepare us for them to get involved in our lives again. So there you go, buddy boyos. That's about all. Peace out.